Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of Griot's Garage YouTube Live. I am Nick.
I'm Stevie.
I'm Julie.
And today we've got a continuation of our last live. We're going to be tackling more advanced machine polishing, because that's where we ended last time, really going from hand to machine and giving you the basics. And today we're going to talk about a lot of different approaches, different tools, how you really progress through a more advanced approach for more and more correction capability as your skills develop.
Yeah.
So stick with us today. We've got good giveaways, and we're going to be answering a lot of questions. And if you've been here before, that's great. You know, we try and get to everybody in the chat, but we don't always do that. So we will try to answer as much as possible.
Yep. But if we don't, we do have our No Questions Left Behind, as always. That'll go live on Friday, and we will cover as many questions as we possibly can during that segment.
Yeah, and so we always like to reward participation. We definitely don't like to reward you spamming us or want to be sure that we're getting to topics, and if we have them as part of our outline and coaching and we see you ask them early, just trust that we'll get to it, and if we don't, and you've asked something very specific, we'll follow up on Friday. But if it's your first time, let us know in the chat. We always love to be generous if it's your first time. And today we're going to be giving away something that is topic appropriate, G15, like a full setup of everything that we're going to coach today.
Yeah, you'll get a G15, one of each of the Boss creams, and one of each of the pads. So because it's such a big giveaway, we're only going to be giving away 2. So we are going to try and make them a little more selective choices. But definitely make sure that you're firing away great questions. We're going to be keeping our eye out for people that seem like they're asking great questions, interested, and ready for maybe that next step. And then we will select 2 winners to win that lovely prize.
Yeah, and if you twist our arms, like I might be forced to draw the ire of the bean counters and give away something more. Maybe something specific to your needs, so that's always good. But hopefully we inspire you. Hopefully you learned something from us today. It is about spring, right? It's tipping over. The sun's staying up a little later. We can kind of count on a little bit better weather. I mean, we don't really, spring for us is pretty miserable, but we still have some good days. But for the rest of the U.S., wherever you're watching, hopefully it is getting to that point where you're about to break the car out for show season. And so if you put your car away, hopefully clean, but without doing a substantial correction, and you may have followed us on the first live a month ago and said, okay, I need a little bit more, we're going to teach you today.
Yeah, or even if it's a daily driver, not something that necessarily was put away, this is a perfect time as the sun's going to be out more, the light's going to be hitting your paint, and you don't want your coworkers to be like, oh, look at that. This is the perfect time to really perfect your paint, get it looking good so that you can show off at work maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if you're polishing your own car, most of your coworkers are probably going to start asking you questions, and then you can start taking their money. So protect that skill. It's a great one. So we, as always, giveaways are going to be for participation, great questions. At some point, we're probably not going to give away G15s for great jokes, but if you're here learning from us and you're ready to take the next step, whether it's equipment or education-wise, we appreciate that. If you have never come out and seen us in Tacoma, we do have a national event show or circuit, and right now, as spring is in full effect, the next nearest event after we just finished Amelia and a couple of the earlier season ones is going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was just there myself a couple weeks ago. Beautiful part of the country. It's one of our biggest shows that we do. We are the title sponsor for the North Carolina Nationals. It is the 10th year that it's been there. That makes me feel really old.
Yeah, that's insane.
Because I went to the first show. And when they launched that show, and Jason and I had a pretty miserable time getting that program off the ground and then tearing down the tent in like a monsoon.
I was going to say, were you driving the truck at that point?
Yes, yeah. So full bore, all gas, no brakes at that point. But yeah, 10 years ago, holy baloney. But great show. So if you're going to be in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, that is an awesome one. If not, we had a great Caffeine and Gasoline earlier this month here in Tacoma. As we round the corner into April, we'll do that again here. And really, as spring has sprung, we've got like one of our most famous sales as well. Mm-hmm. So for tuning in today, you guys are going to get early access to our 20% off liquid car care sale, which is live right now. We'll start officially tomorrow, but for you all joining us early, use the code SMLiquid for 20% off all of your liquid car care. So again, if we inspire you tonight, you're ready to buy, hopefully we can guide you to some of the best liquids to pair with your processes and expectations.
Yep, and again, that's valid through 3/25, so you have time, but hop on it. You don't want to miss out.
Yeah, spring has sprung, right? So get out there and wash your car. And if you're going to polish it, you're going to learn something tonight. One other thing, you guys made mention of it last year. We finally debuted our apparel program with our local partner, Group 6. So the shirts that you guys have commented on for years in these lives, they have only really been available to local Caffeine and Gasoline attendees. Jared at Group 6 has been very patient with us as we've stood up this program. But you can go buy these shirts now. So Group 6, or www.group6 griotsgarage.com. We're doing a limited series, so that will be tied to any catalog cover cars. The Hakasuka, the 71 Skyline is the first design in that limited series. And then some of the legacy ones that we're wearing currently, the MP47, McLaren, and Stevie is donning the car we're going to work on, my 63 Lincoln. So we'll be circulating some of our legacy designs. We've got over 60 designs in backup. So
yeah, and we keep adding 2 or 3 more each Caffeine and Gasoline, so there's going to be a lot of fun ones. A lot of you have asked about women's shirts. We will have women's sizing available, so that is a great option. For reference, the shirt that I'm wearing is a men's small because I like the longer, but the women's is also it's just a slightly shorter, if you like a more like normal fit tee.
Yeah, and I really, really like the men's cut. It's a nice heavyweight but flexible cotton. And then we've got hoodies and stickers as well. So really, whatever design you like, Jared makes them to order, and they're awesome. We're so excited for that because we've gotten so many comments and questions about those over the years.
Let's make sure when we're entering in the website that Group 6, the S is actually the number 6.
Yeah, maybe you could just post the URL in the comments too, so everybody can check it out. Okay, well, we want to show you guys some stuff today, so that's what we're going to focus on. And we've got the Lincoln back. Black paint generally does not need to be treated uniquely, but it's the least forgiving in light. So we talked a little bit about that last time. With similar approaches to similar color systems. Obviously, there are different approaches for those colors, in particular because of how much a base color coat will show.
Yeah. So especially a vehicle like this, black paint's typically soft anyways, but it also shows everything, especially when it doesn't have metallic. And we kind of learned last time, well, we didn't learn, we already expected that, but last time in the demo, you saw that this paint does leave a lot of haze when you polish it if you're not using a gentle enough approach as your finishing step. And so we thought that this paint would be perfect since it does have some scratches, that we could demo exactly why you would need a 2-step process, what situation that would benefit in, because you don't always need it. And we talked about last time how you can get away with a 1-step polish in a lot of cases, but there are a lot of cases where you would want or need a 2-step finish process.
Yeah, so last time we did talk about just kind of the basics, technique, what do you have to do to prep your car. So if you're watching right now and you've never polished before, I'd say, come back and watch this one, but we're going to start assuming that you've watched the intro series, which really covers where you should be starting when you're about to polish your car. You should have washed the car. You should have decontaminated the car. If you're going to do chemical and mechanical decontamination, which there is a difference, we've covered that in a live before as well. All of this lives on our YouTube channel, so you can go revisit it at any time. They're the same deep dives with demos, explaining the differences, explaining the right products. So it's all out there. And so we're going to take you from when you've established that, oh, I now am comfortable with a machine polisher. Now I want more. And so two-step polishing or multi-step polishing is really what we're going to focus on today. As Stevie mentioned, we kind of know the paint system on the Lincoln, and we're going to demonstrate it. But a lot of this is just, you got to get the training wheels off the bike. You got to jump in. And as you develop your skill set, just knowing what tools to reach for, and then knowing that the conditions are going to constantly change. Right? You can do something to a Mercedes from 2006 that has a blue paint system, and then do a Mercedes from 2014 with a black paint system or a silver paint system and get completely different results. So a lot of this is how flexible you can be in your approach, what you or your customer are trying to achieve, and then having the right tools for the job.
Yeah. So you typically wouldn't need more than 2 steps, depending on what setup you're using, but with our Boss creams especially, you're not going to need more than 2 steps in most instances. Obviously, if you're going to wet sand, that would kind of technically add a step if it's a really, really severe defect that you're going after. We're not covering that today. But we're just going to dive into a 2-step polishing process where you start with a aggressive pad and fast correcting cream, and then you do notice that there's haze left behind, and obviously you want to perfect the surface as much as possible. So then we'll finish with a softer pad and show you kind of the benefit of having that finishing step in these cases. So
Yeah.
like Nick was saying, a silver car with metallic especially, you could probably get away with a 1-step, even a finishing sealant or all-in-one type product with a more aggressive pad and call it good, and it looks amazing. But especially with this black paint, that's a little less forgiving. It's going to be really crucial that you understand that process.
Yeah, and we've already had a couple good questions that are coming in. So again, when you are talking about polishing a paint system, we've kind of covered the, wives' tales, for lack of a better term, about machines in general, and that a lot of those are based upon direct drive rotaries, right, and the heat that they can generate. But then a lot of those horror stories are also based upon bad prep, so a poor washing job, a poor decon job. And then lastly, it's not doing as much as you can to assess the paint system, right? So when we talk about polishing, what are we doing? We're removing a very small layer of paint to level out or flatten it to remove surface defects that we are seeing in the form of highly concentrated minor scratches, some deeper scratches. For
water spots.
Yeah, for water spots, a great call. For more substantial refinishing job, you're talking wet sanding and doing some serious leveling. All of this will apply. One of the things that's already being called out is measuring your paint. We've always recommended this for a car that you're uncertain of the finish because, hey, it's great to know how much paint you have left before you just dive in and choose your process, because that will guide your expectations. It can also guide your process. So with modern OEM cars, most OEMs, at least at this point in time, are doing color clear systems. Clear coat is cheaper than color. So they put a little bit of pigment down and then finish it off with color. But knowing how much is on the car and getting consistent measurements around a car can guide if the car has been refinished or not. With this Lincoln, I know I paid the bill for it being refinished, right? So it's a more modern paint system, and it happens to be softer than an OEM or factory paint job. So we have that understanding, we have that experience, but for everybody who's asking, right, that's the beginning polisher, right? How do I safeguard myself from doing damage? Well, do your prep work the right way and thoroughly. If you're unsure still, you can measure the paint.
Yeah.
If you try a mild process and are unhappy, now you can go to a more aggressive process, and that's what we're going to show you today.
Yeah, and we do have a really sick, our Boss paint thickness gauge. If you guys are wanting that, definitely check that out. You can hook it up to an app on your phone and keep track of your measurements, but then also easily be able to track them around the panels of the vehicle. You can store them in folders, essentially. So that's a great tool to check out if you're interested.
Also not extremely expensive, right? It will work on most ferrous metals, so steel body panels. It will work on aluminum as well. Unless you wanted to spend a ton of money, it will not work on plastic painted parts such as bumpers on more modern vehicles. But it's just a good way to gauge it, right? And you can use it when you're buying a car to establish whether something's been refinished. Or if you're a professional detailer, customer brings you a car, says, it's the factory finish, it's never been polished, yada, yada, yada. Well, you can call BS on that pretty quick with a paint gauge. And that just gives you a little bit more certainty of how much material you have to work with. Because once again, polishing, it's removing some material, a very small amount. And you'll see, just this Lincoln paint job, it wasn't inexpensive, but it is painted such so that it can be refined, by many, many times over. So that'll guide our process today.
Yeah, and especially if this is something that you're doing on other people's cars, if you are maybe doing a side gig, mobile detailing, something like that, it's always best to kind of have an idea of what you're working on before you get started. So it's essentially insurance, so that you don't get into a sticky situation where there already wasn't a lot of paint on a panel. I had a customer come in when I worked in the store that had already taken a car to a shop, and they had done some pretty crazy work on it and removed a lot of the paint, and I didn't realize that before I started polishing. That would be a great example of when a Boss or a paint thickness gauge would be beneficial to you.
Yeah. So a lot of great questions, a lot of great knowledge getting shared. Everybody's suggesting somebody's got a drink for something, so who knows about that. But so we talked about measuring as a safeguard. I also saw a question about, can you polish a fresh paint system? Yes, of course you can. That's what every painter does, right? They're sanding and then they're refining through polishing steps. They might use a direct drive rotary. That's a really experienced person who knows their boundaries and luckily is qualified to repaint it if they go through it. For you all on the other side, in particular, if you're dealing with an older car of your own or a customer where you're uncertain, dual action random orbitals are a great tool for that. And we talked a little bit about our enthusiast, like entry-level tools. Say entry-level not because they aren't professional grade, but for an inexperienced user.
They're the most forgiving.
They're the most forgiving, right? You can learn on those. You can tune those up, as you guys mentioned, with smaller backing plates and thinner pads and get professional results. But what we're talking about today is we're going to be talking about saving time, knowing you have to do multiple steps, how to assess which steps to do, and then what is your pad and polish selection through those steps.
Yeah, so these long throw orbitals are more aggressive than, and that sounds really aggressive, but essentially, like Nick was saying, they're going to cut through defects a little bit quicker, and they are able to handle a little bit more severe defects than your standard G9 or G8. So that's the main benefit here. And then, of course, the rotary, like Nick was saying, you really want to have experience before you're using that on an actual detail job that you're doing. So whether that's a car that you really don't care about, or a junkyard hood, or panel from a body shop, we're not going to cover a lot of that today just because that's even deeper down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, a wet sanding course is generally a multi-day course. In the sequence of how we're teaching you all, get the tool in your hand, see what you can do with it, see that just having a machine does not mean immediate damage, and that's what we call opening up the wormhole. And today we're going to talk about the depths of the wormhole. And we won't even get to the deepest depths of it because there's a lot more there. But I think you'd be amazed what you can accomplish with the right tools and pads. And one of the things that I think we've designed, and it was part of Jeff's real brilliant thought process, is flexibility within the system for different approaches, right? As I mentioned, you could do similar makes, different years, and have different outcomes. How do you adapt? Do you have the right equipment to adapt every time? So some really technical questions as well. That's great. I think those are ones that we might come back to. But let's talk about what your goals are with a two-step polishing process.
Yeah, so typically a two-step would be to remove some heavier defects, and your first step is going to be a heavier cut. So that's going to be your compound and your aggressive pad to really remove that defect the best that you can. Typically, because that setup can be more aggressive, you are left with some light hazing or marring, depending on the surface, that then needs a more gentle approach to then remove that hazing and really perfect and refine that surface, leaving it deep and glossy and rich and amazing looking.
Yeah, and I think it might be counterintuitive, but sometimes a two-step saves time because with a shorter throw orbital like our G9 or G8 and attempting to do something in one step, it can be frustrating if you are chasing those deeper defects or more consistent damage, such as like remnants from a car wash tunnel or consistent water spotting that is deeply etched across a car. You can improve those with a single step and machine polishing, no question. If you want to get rid of them, there's almost no doubt that the faster way to approach that is with multiple steps. So your primary step is really going to be your cutting step. And then, as you mentioned, your kind of jeweling, polishing, refinement step is going to be your secondary step. In a lot of cases, that may still leave a paint finish that is perfect, but requires protection. That's fine, right? Protection is not part of the process we're talking about right now, unless you use something like an all-in-one as your secondary step that has a light protection package. But really, I think the other thing too is, depending on the paint system you're approaching, you might have you might have a medium and a superfine step. You might have a heavy cut and a medium step. That's all going to depend on the paint surface you're working and your ability to assess how what you're doing gets you to the result you want. So we're going to start, and what we always recommend for a beginner or for a more advanced user is a test panel. All right. And the reason we do a test panel is to establish, hey, is this process going to give me the result that I want, throughout the car, so I don't go and do a process all the way around and then come back with my secondary step and realize, oh, I achieved inferior results initially, and now I work with a different second step and change my approach. That does not preclude changing results from panel to panel, whether that be a heavily sun-damaged flat panel like the hood, trunk, and roof on this Lincoln that could be exposed to more oxidation versus a vertical panel, and or a car that has been refinished with different grades of paint over different periods of time. So it doesn't mean you're asleep at the wheel, but you attempt to establish a process in a small area. And we did queue this up so that we could demonstrate it, and I'm very familiar with this Lincoln, as is a lot of other people that have worked on this car. And really the damage that we're seeing on this paint system, so you don't completely mock me for it not being defect free.
Oh,
First
they
of
were
all,
teasing you last time.
this car is used. Goodness gracious. It's a beautiful show queen, but I want to drive it around. And we had it out at Good Guys last summer, and there were a lot of forest fires. I don't know if you guys explained all of this.
No,
But
well, a little bit.
heavy ash, and some of the younger employees that were working there were a little terrified to put speed shine in a towel, so they dusted it. Now, dusting with normal dust probably doesn't create as much damage as we're seeing on the paint right now. If you look at this car in normal light, it's absolute mirror, it's consistently flat, but under the fine light, you're gonna see some of those more consistent scratches from really the ash and the heavier kind of fallout that we were experiencing during that weekend.
Yeah.
Paired with a dry dusting, right?
Yeah. Whether it's ash or anything else, this is, like you said, a loved car that's going to be used, not sat around and looked at all the time, and that's par for the course. So
it's also part of the rationale for why you might approach it one way or the other, right? Are you preparing a car to sell it? Well, yeah, sure, go as hard as you want. Are you going to use it, and is this a clean reset so that your next polishing job is easier? Sure, do 2 steps. But just minding the fact that it's a finite paint system. Again, I know there's plenty of paint on that car. It does have a clear coat. It's a softer clear coat, a more modern clear coat, but I want to get those scratches out, and Stevie showed me how.
So we're going to start with our first step, which is going to be a heavier cut. Everything that we talked about in our last live still pertains as far as test sections and testing your process and using the least aggressive method possible. So we've already done the testing. We've determined that a microfiber pad gets these defects out the best with fast correcting cream. That's what we're going to start with. And then we'll see what the surface looks like after that and why we would want a second step on this surface especially.
Yeah, so once you get polishing, right, we've selected microfiber pad and fast correcting cream. It's what we've learned before setting this up, but we'll talk about the pad facing and techniques. And you're using a G21 as well?
Yep.
Okay, so she's using what is our longest stroke orbital or longest throw orbital. And that longer throw is going to create more lateral friction. Paired with a microfiber facing, you're going to have a lot of temperature, a lot of motion back and forth. You're going to be able to cut pretty well with that. Mm-hmm. So I'll let you get to it, and I'll keep explaining what you're doing as you're doing it.
Yeah, so I'm going to throw the cord over my shoulder, as always, and then I'm going to find in the light where those defects start, because we have done a test section. Completely optional, but I like to outline the area that I'm going to work first, and then starting on speed 3.
So just like we coached in the beginning orbital live last month, we're spreading the product around at a slower speed, and now turning up the speed and slowing down our arm. As you get more and more proficient with polishing, and again, just establishing a process in this test area, you're going to understand how many passes or back and forth, and attempt to repeat that pretty consistently. You can see Stevie's got nice slow arm speed. That backing plate is rotating well, which means that she's holding the tool at a very balanced angle. And we're doing overlapping passes to ensure even coverage. I like to work in crosshatch patterns. Some people can count and not lose track just by going up and down, back and forth. But we're just trying to establish a routine in this test area for a result that will replicate across the rest of the car. Now again, we chose this approach because we established it. However, it represents your more aggressive cutting or correction approach. If you were chasing deeper defects or water spots or things that had been present in your paint for some time. And as we described, this longer throw machine, our most aggressive cream and fast correcting cream, and our most aggressive pad, microfiber pad, they'll get the deeper stuff, but they might leave remnants, which I think will be evident when you wipe off the excess polish. So how many passes was that? Three? Yep. 3 passes. Okay, and there's no real rule in terms of, is 2 passes enough? Is 4 passes enough? That's going to be learned by you as you establish your process on the test panel. We'll say there is too many passes, right? When either your polish dries up, which you'll see, sometimes you'll start seeing dust. And I think a rule of thumb that I always try and follow is I'll do 4 passes, stop, check the temperature of my pad, check the temperature of the surface, and then wipe the excess away and check if I'm getting the result I want. If I'm not, then yes, maybe I might do a couple more passes or adjust my process for a more aggressive, more gentle approach from there. So we're establishing process right now still.
Yeah. So as you can see, you may think that I just missed a lot of product in the wipe-off. I actually didn't. Those are buffer trails. So this first step has removed all of those, 99% of those scratches and swirls that we were dealing with, but it left behind this nasty haze, and obviously I'm not cool with that. I don't know about you, Nick. I wouldn't drive that to a show.
Well, again, this is kind of the cost, right?
Yep.
What I know is that to chase those deeper defects, there were a couple of them when we were looking over the paint. We've got to start with a more aggressive process, right? If we try and gentle our way in there for too long, we're going to get frustrated. If this was an original paint system, like one I've polished on a 1959 Buick, I might know that chasing those deeper defects isn't worth it, right? Because now I'm compromising the overall thickness of an original paint system. With this, saying, hey, I want those deeper things out, I'm going to save myself some time by using an aggressive setup, which reduces the amount of passes I need to do. And then I'm just going to introduce the second step for refinement. So that's what we've learned here.
Yeah, so you want to err on the side of caution. We always talk about the least aggressive method within reason. If you're going to be going after those defects and you want them all the way out, hitting it, 3 sets of 4 passes with an orange foam pad isn't going to be nearly as efficient as hitting it with 1 set of 4 passes with a microfiber, for example. So that's why you want to do your test section and make sure that you're checking the results after. But then also, we talked about like repainted surfaces and things like that. Make sure that you're checking your results on each of the panels as well, because there could be an instance where, like for example, a door was involved in an accident before you got the car and you weren't sure of that or didn't know that, and then that panel is repainted, the rest is original, and so that's responding completely differently or something like that.
Yeah, we got a couple questions I want to address, and Julie, I was going to get to that when you're typing up. So, we had a question from Jason Lillis. Says, we have a lot of experience. We started with a pretty aggressive approach. Well, we tested it and established that, right? But as a more novice polisher trying to get to the level of experience that you'll have a little bit better judgment, right? You'll start to understand certain paint types, whether it's refinished or a factory paint job. A middle-of-the-road approach is always a good suggestion, right? So, like, literally correcting cream in an orange foam pad, that's a great establishing step, right? Do a couple passes of that, see how it's affecting it. Do a couple more, see how it's affecting it. Are you getting that result? Well, a middle-of-the-road approach tells you one or the other, right? Go more aggressive or go gentler. So definitely a great way to start, right? First, do no harm is definitely one of those rules of detailing that we always want to coach. We've talked about how prep can affect that, but sure, if you're going to step up to a longer throw machine, you're a little nervous about, am I going to take off too much paint, or am I going to overcorrect relative to what is needed? Middle of the road approach is a great way to go. Team Ramey asked, do the Boss Cream provide a production date on the bottle? Every single Griot's Garage product has a batch number and production code on the bottom. It's right there in dark ink. And if you're having a specific issue with one of your bottles, you think there might be an issue with the batch, you've stored it for too long, you can always call in. We keep formula or production retains for 2 years. So if it lines up with something we might have caught in QC and it got out the door, we can fix that. But yeah, you do have a date code if you want to contact customer service. Our texting app on the website even. We can validate batch codes for you really easily. So
yeah. Bevan McCain had a great question. Are you moving the polisher slow for demonstration purposes, or is that the speed you should move the polisher when you polish? That's the speed that we recommend. So you may have noticed I moved a little quicker the first pass, and that's because that's just to spread the product. But then each pass after that, you want to take it nice, steady, and slow. If you move too fast, sometimes on social media you see those videos of guys like going crazy with a panel. They might be using a rotary, or they might be doing, double the passes in order to allow the machine to do the work that it needs to do.
It might also be high on a drug or something, So, if you really, polishing is work, right? You're manipulating a tool around the contours of a car. You're going to build up your shoulders and your arms. But the machine does a lot of work too, so you don't have to do fast passes. But yeah, you could do 4 slow passes, or you could do 8 fast ones. I would think that it just depends on your cardio level, whether you're sober or not. And really just, I think with a longer throw tool, some people may bring a faster arm speed from a shorter throw orbital into that. We're here to say, no, you can slow your arm down, let the machine do some more work, because every single swing of that counterbalance is doing more work than a short throw orbital. Sorry, Julie, you've been waving at us.
Joel Peterson had a question regarding the pressure that you're using. So Stevie, can you describe the pressure that you're using?
Yeah, I was just about to hit that next. Really, you want to hold the orbital against the paint, but you're not pressing down too hard. I'd say if I had to estimate, maybe like a pound or two of pressure. You're kind of holding the orbital against and letting it do the work, not bearing down on it. And if you watch the last live that we did, I kind of demonstrated if you like press down a little harder on the tool, it'll give you signs that you're putting a little too much pressure, unless you're using a rotary. But yeah, just holding it against the paint firmly and not really bearing down on it is what you want to do.
The other thing too is you step up to a longer throw orbital, that backing plate is moving further off center, right? So the harder you push down on that center point, the more strain it's going to put on that backing plate as it goes further away from center. So it really is kind of a balancing act, and that is part of the skill, right? You'll see guys kind of approaching it looking like they're going Instagram cool, but really that might just be how they have to balance the machine to keep the pad rotating. And so long as the backing plate and pad are rotating, you're going to get that abrasion and refinement that you're seeking without having to bear down on it. Very rarely with a long throw orbital do you have to apply aggressive pressure as a way to get the correction effect you want versus just capitalizing on the energy potential of that throw combined with the abrasion of the pad and abrasive you've chosen. So really, it's not a high pressure situation. In fact, it's more of a balancing act.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'm going to do a demo real quick because I don't want to get too far into this before we finish this. I've got perfecting cream on the black foam pad just to show you guys the difference between even just two creams. And we have a whole nother live and a video that you and Sam did on pad flexing that we can get deeper into that. But I just want to show you the difference between the cream even on the same pad and the importance of really perfecting and testing your step, each of the steps, not just the first one, the finishing step as well.
Yeah, and Dr. Deek asked, did you increase the speed after the spread? Yes. We coached that last time in the beginning. We use a slower speed to spread it out over the entire area we intend to work, and then we increase the speed. Yep. You can do it the way you would like, but that is a very effective approach as you're getting more and more familiar.
Yep. So I'm going to go ahead, same deal. I'm starting on the lower speed. I'm going to spread it real quick with a quick pass and then bump up to the higher speed. Take it nice, steady, and slow for about 3 passes.
So again, Stevie's now stepped it up to about a speed 5. Again, slow arm speed, but the basics are still there. We can see the pad rotation, very consistent. It almost looks oblong because of that random orbital effect and just the shutter rate or whatever. Our video guy will tell me if I'm wrong on that or not. But it almost looks warbly, but we've got consistent rotation. And she's stretched out over the trunk, so too much pressure would slow that down. So it's just keeping it balanced and then working a consistent process. But this would be our second step. We had a couple other questions. Does the 2-step polishing process include clay? No, we spoke about how we're starting with the assumption that the car has been washed and decontaminated, whether both mechanically and or chemically. So we're just talking polishing now, right? Assuming that the car is properly prepped. And we didn't even do the final prep, which would be taping the chrome and edges because we've got a big flat working area on this Lincoln, so we're not even pushing it. But yeah, the 2 steps, we're just talking about 2 separate polishing steps. And the benefits of doing an aggressive and refinement approach as a way to make your paint system that much better.
Yep.
Okay.
So this offered a huge improvement. I hope you guys can see it on camera, but there is still some haze left behind. So while it did remove a lot of the visible haze to my direct eye without direct harsh light on it, There is still some haze that you can see. It's just lighter than the finish should be.
Yeah, we're talking definitely a reduction in the graying and buffer trails, but when you look at that really direct reflection, Matt, if you'll get right back to us, right? We've got a very clean professional. Okay, this is going to be a professional light here, right? So this should be crisp, but we've got kind of a halo around it, and you can see it even more exaggerated, right? This area we've got greater, like more consistent looking haze on the outside of this barrel. This one we've just got kind of this like washy, unclear effect, and that would be really what we're going to say is, hey, we refined that. We got rid of this really bigger haze, but this paint system is so soft that with that very gentle finishing pad and perfecting cream, we've got to step it down again. Thank God we did a test panel to establish this, right?
Yeah.
Now on a different paint system, you might get a completely different response. That might be perfectly clear. But we've got a difference. Now, so we're gonna learn and adjust the approach. And I think one of the things you're demonstrating is that you're using the same pad, right? We're using our black finishing foam, very, very low density foam. We're just changing the abrasive now.
Yep.
So we are tuning to the result we want, which that's better, but it's not really what we want.
Yep, so as he mentioned, I've still got the black foam finishing pad, but now I've got the finishing sealant, which is slightly less aggressive even than the perfecting cream, and it does have a protectant in there, and that's inherently going to have a little bit of deepening and darkening capabilities, but really what we're looking for here is a gentle enough approach that it's not leaving behind the haze that we're seeing right now. So I'm going to follow the same process real quick, just do 3 passes on the section that I didn't already polish. Or should I do the one that I did, and then we can see a clean before and after?
I think it depends on how well we're seeing that through the camera. I might do the...
What if I just do half the section that I did with perfecting cream?
I'd say cut it into a quarter. Yeah,
Okay.
let's do that so we can see that really well.
I'll do half this way. That way we have half the section that was microfiber haze and half the section that was perfecting.
Yeah, so Brian, so Stevie's going to do the exact same process, guys.
Yep.
We're going to take that half section and make it a quarter section so we can see the difference in terms of pad tuning or pad flexing or changing your abrasive with the same pad. So low speed spread, turn up the speed. Speed on the tool, slow down your arm. And just keeping a very balanced polishing system. We'll talk about some of the challenges of accomplishing that as we see the results after Stevie's done here. The paint is very soft, enthusiasts. It is. It's modern clear coats, unless they're extremely high ceramic or high solids. They're pretty soft. Okay, good. You guys are able to see the results. That is fantastic. We got a question about if we will have a polisher sale anytime soon. The best way to look for that, Red Dawn, is to sign up for our emails. That is the first place we announce any of our upcoming promotions or new product launches. And just to remind everybody who may have joined a little later, for joining right now, we are running our 20% liquid car care sale for like our welcome to spring season. That is going on through the 25th, so you do have some time, but for being here with us tonight, you get early access to that sale. So if we're inspiring you to get out there and go set up your next big polishing job, it'd be a great time to save some money on our liquids. As far as the machines go, we do promote them from time to time. We also promote them via more complete kits like our G8 and G9 random orbital kit. Sometimes we'll do great discounts on those as well. So sign up for our emails, follow us on social media. That's the first place you'll find out about those sales.
Yep. So moving back to the panel over here, this section still has the microfiber haze right here. So if you can see how light that is, this is just microfiber haze. Sorry. This is just microfiber haze and then straight to the finishing sealant with the finishing pad. And that already looks so amazing and deep and
We can
dark.
literally see your eyebrows in the reflection
Uh-oh.
of a black paint. No, that's great. I mean, that's how clear it is. I'm seeing that through a very tiny monitor. So
Yeah,
hopefully
so you have microfiber haze, and then this is straight to the finishing. You can also see up here, you still have the comparison of the finishing versus the perfecting on the finishing pad. So you can see the difference in haze there. So overall, that's our premium finish. That's gonna get this thing looking amazing, show car ready for the show car season that we're approaching.
Yeah, now do the rest of it. All right, so really a lot of things. I mean, showing you guys like the difference is the start of what we can coach to, right? So for two-step, we're talking much more substantial correction capability and or processes. So we started with a cutting step. We've started with a more aggressive, longer throw orbital, a thinner pad system, a more aggressive pad facing in microfiber versus just traditional foam. So we started with microfiber again. We had some questions about how do you learn how to start? Well, experience is king here. But a middle ground approach can guide you, one way or the other. But we knew that we were going to get deeper scratches out with a more aggressive pad facing, being microfiber and wool, really are our most aggressive systems. Both have slight foam interfaces, so they dampen a little bit. And our real bad boy is our non-foam backed microfiber fast cutting pad. I rarely use this. I don't know how often you bust it out, but for some gnarly stuff and a very experienced user, this is a great tool.
Yeah.
It'll cut pretty tough.
I'd say I've only needed the wool or the microfiber fast cutting a handful of times.
So when we are introducing a fabric, right, we are getting lateral motion, we're getting some friction and temperature from that. When we're exaggerating that motion with a long throw, we're getting friction and temperature from that too. So that double whammy paired with an aggressive abrasive, we're gonna get some cut. All right, managing the temperature by checking your process as you go through, always critical. But with a dual action random orbital, you're going to have some margin for error. Now the benefit of these taking out deeper leaves behind the hazing or the remnants, the micro marring that we are seeing. So the cost of that aggressive approach is you have to do the refining approach. I think what you demonstrated is, hey, picking an open cell foam or softer foam, we have choices with the abrasive. So same foam, two different abrasives, we got two different results. One of it, we saw a very soft paint system that left some hazing behind. Is the paint system great? Yeah. Are the deeper scratches gone? Yeah, but I've got this little visual cue that I don't like, that my customer's not gonna wanna pay top dollar for. Yeah. So I changed my abrasive on the same pad, boom, got the process I wanted. That process is what I would repeat around the car. With the interchangeability of the pads and the Boss creams, you have the flexibility to adapt, as we had kind of discussed earlier, to the paint system you're working on, to the expectations of the customer, to how much time you have, what your desired outcome is. But you can see, right? I mean, if we can do 3 passes with 2 steps, it's gonna be just as easy as being very stubbornly dissatisfied with 1 step and 6 passes, times the amount of real estate here, right? Mm-hmm. And will ultimately achieve a superior result as well.
Yeah. One of the questions from Elliot Carson was, what do you guys use the Interflex pad for? I've only used it for polishing glass. We haven't really delved into contours just yet, but this is a perfect segue.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a great additive between the backing plate and the pad to give you a little extra conformability. Oh, wrong side, hello. So this just sits on the pad as a normal pad would, right? It gives you a little extra thickness to the pad. And then what that's going to do, I don't know if I can really demo this on the paint, but maybe I shouldn't use a black pad as well. Oh well. But it's going to give you a little extra conformability in there. So if you do have contours, this is just going to help adapt to those slightly better. It also, of course, has cooling holes to help move air and keep everything cool. But that's really great for that. And then also, as you're using it with glass polishing, it does help kind of dampen a little bit of the vibration and make it run a lot smoother, especially on contoured glass. Some glass kind of tends to curve on the outer edges, and this will really help get into that.
Yeah, and we kind of talked in the first basic polishing about the thicker or the 1 inch thick pads. What they give is lower energy transfer, but also that conformability, like that, a little bit of a training wheel. You're going to get great results with them. But as you deal with, I mean, this Lincoln is, the guy who repainted it hates it because it's so straight and flat. The guy who's going to polish it and maintain it, I love that there's not a lot of contours, right? That it's just a big flat surface that I can just park it, balance the machine, and work around. You start dealing with old Ferraris, things with a lot of curves, and you're trying to do a professional grade two-step process. Well, you're going to run into some conformability where those, some curves and challenges where you want some conformability. And that's where that Interflex just gives you the opportunity to use that pad facing that you're establishing, but push it into some panels to keep that pad rotation going. So just another tool to keep in your back pocket. Dr. Deek asked, what was the ideal combination for that paint system?
It was fast correcting on a microfiber, a Boss microfiber pad, and then finishing sealant on a black foam finishing pad.
Yeah. So Julie, do we have a winner for our giveaway? Because I think we got to at least give away one, right?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Joel Peterson has been entering in some excellent questions
Joel
today.
Peterson? Okay.
Yeah. Joel's a winner.
Joel Peterson, email us at winners@griotsgarage.com. We are going to send you a G15 with a full complement of the Boss creams and the pad system, so you can go refine.
Heck
So
yeah.
awesome, Joel, and be sure to email us. Okay, that's a big prize.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations! Thank you for asking so many great questions. We had a couple questions I want to totally address with you about pad management post. From panel to panel, right? This is really important, guys. We were given the privilege to go to a place to detail some very special vehicles earlier this year, and they were huge. Black paint, really unique paint systems, and we had to manage our pads because we were off-site, we were in a garage just working on these things. That was probably the biggest lesson I've ever had with pad management, in particular because we were doing a two-step process and we were using a lot of microfiber. And one of the benefits of that microfiber is, again, that lateral motion, those fibers that create some of the friction. Well, as you add abrasives or liquid material to it and then introduce temperature, this gets matted down. Mm-hmm. If I reapply more abrasive without standing that fiber back up, I'm not going to get the same effect from panel to panel. Mm-hmm. And at some point, the pad does become saturated. So how do we determine that, and what do we do from panel to panel?
Yeah, so really with microfiber, after each polishing section, ideally, you're going to be fluffing it either with our pad conditioning brush or compressed air. I don't have one out here, sorry.
Shoot.
Just going to run and grab one.
It's a very easy process. Basically, you have your orbital plugged in, pad on it, and just away from women, children, and loved ones. You can spin that tool up, maybe not necessarily to full speed, but just kind of low and away from your body, and particularly if you're wearing an apron, and just put the pad brush on it. And I like to work it kind of center to back. You'll see kind of some of those fibers coming off, but also what you're going to be knocking off is dust and excessive abrasive. And boom, we've stood those fibers back up. One of the things that this helps is, in particular, if you're using a foam facing, you're going to pull some of that excess abrasive out of the pores of the foam. So it's going to manage temperature better over time. And then you're going to get longer life out of that pad. Usually, we recommend about 4 to 6 pads per vehicle per process. So if you're going to do a two-step process, you might need 4 microfiber pads, but to stretch them across the entirety of the car and maintain a consistent result, I'm doing this panel by panel, section by section if I've got a huge panel like that fender on this Lincoln, which is 6 feet long, I might do half and then half, brushing it in between. One of the rules that I've always used in terms of, okay, when's the pad spent, right? I'm cleaning it every panel. One, if you're cleaning it every time and you can still see that you can't really open up the pores of the pad with your brushing or by blowing it out with air, it might just be saturated. If there's any rebound that is not coming back after that same cleaning, right, it just looks depressed or deformed, switch to a new pad. And then a visual indicator is if it's really like saturating up into like a portion of the pad thickness itself. What you're doing is you're creating more weight in the pad, there's less air going through it, and you're just diminishing the effect of the pad over time. So that's, use your best judgment, but don't try and stretch a pad too far. It's better to just use more pads.
Yeah, the more clogged that the cells of the foam are, the less cut you're getting, so it's going to diminish the results that you're getting. You're going to have to do 2 times as many passes with the same pad to get the results if you just let it keep building up. So yeah, like Nick said, make sure that you're swapping them out regularly.
It's amazing. Like, we sell pads. I understand that. But when you clean your pad consistently and get consistent results, and then all of a sudden the cleaning isn't working and your results are dying off, you're having to do an extra pass and you're getting towards the end of the car, you're tired, freshening up the pad, oh my gosh, we're telling you this because it is the best practice and it does work better this way. Otherwise, you're going to be changing your process as you work around the car. You're not going to get consistent results. There's nobody else, even guys in our industry that don't sell pads, that would recommend using less pads as the proper way to approach
Nobody
this.
reputable.
Nobody reputable. No, I mean, I can't imagine somebody saying 1 pad per car is the right way to do it. That's not going to fly in the internet world.
Yeah, you're also going to have really sketchy results by the end of the vehicle, and your pad's going to wear down a lot quicker, which is another thing I wanted to touch on. Yes, we are selling pads. Of course, we want to recommend more. I get the whole naysayer kind of vibe going on, but if you use 1 pad longer than you should, that pad's also going to break down a lot quicker. Whereas if you're maintaining the pad as normal and swapping it out like you should be, you can wash and reuse that pad numerous times. And so you're still getting a great benefit and cost per use from that pad. It's just not all being used at once.
That's good.
You're spanning that out.
Yeah, you're getting more mileage out of the pad by not breaking it down on a single job.
Yeah.
And then, of course, cleaning pads. Nobody likes doing that, okay? But it is the best way to extend the life of that pad. Pads are consumable. There's absolutely no way you should be getting single uses unless you're doing something stubborn like Stevie suggested, like trying to go do a whole car with 1 pad.
Yep.
Okay, we also, I want to talk about pad flexing a little bit more because one thing, just acknowledging that there are other pads, there are other compounds out there. We did design our system so that we have some flexibility within it, right? You can put a more aggressive compound on a less dense foam, get a great result, right? That might be just a process you tune. And in fact, I've interacted with enough of you to know orange foam plus fast correcting cream, that's my go-to every time. Okay. Every time, I'm going to say that's probably your best starting point, right? Maybe that's how you approach it. But I can't really tell you you're wrong if you like perfecting cream on a microfiber pad as your very best approach for German paints, right? Or I like this approach on Japanese OEMs pre-1995. Okay, those are really specific ways that you can use this system to approach different paint systems to get the result that you at least know is your gold standard of, should I go more aggressive? Should I be more gentle? Mm-hmm. It's one of the beauties of this.
Yeah, kind of speaking to pad flexing on paint like this, that you can see how dramatically the compound and the pad impacted the surface. There might be a case where you want to use a softer pad with a more aggressive compound to get a little extra cut, but you really want to be careful about the pad adding haze, or vice versa. So like you're saying, it really does depend on each specific scenario.
Yeah, and this is, again, built with experience. I think part of us showing you this is, one, you can see, right, with 2 steps, oh man, we got that paint looking good. But that second step also had a variable within it, right? The same pad, but different creams. Okay, that's going to play out in the world at large. If you didn't know anything about polishing and you went and bought different brands with different density foams and different types of abrasives, you're still going to experience that. And that's only gained by experience. It's only gained by starting it. Knowing that 2 steps, yes, you're removing like a little more material from a paint system, but you're getting the result, whether it's what you want or what a customer wants. 2 steps sometimes is less work, as counterintuitive as that seems. Well, we got 10 pad guys, so they're buying more than our recommended 4 to 6. Really, again, I think if you're a professional and you're cleaning your pads consistently and you just use 1 pad per panel, great. If you're an enthusiast that doesn't want to buy 40 pads, then you can definitely get away with 4 to 6 pads as a healthy one. Could you get away with 2? Sure. On a little smart car or a smaller car, no question. You will learn over time how far your pads can go versus how much material you're using and how many passes you're doing. This is all learned, but we're here to encourage you to try, to start, to get after it.
Exactly. Bevan McCain asked which pad I tend to use the most for final polishing shine. For mine, it's perfecting cream and perfecting foam, but as you saw on this surface, that really isn't an acceptable solution on this paint. So again, it just harps on, it really depends, and you have to do your test section. What's your preferred finishing after?
I'm sorry, I was reading the comments. What did he say?
What's your preferred second step setup?
My preferred second step, it depends upon the use of the car. So, we finished down with finishing sealant on this car. Mild abrasive with Monton wax. The Monton wax adds a little bit of protection and has a little bit of fill on a very sensitive soft paint system. If I were to do my wife's car, which is a more modern GMC, luckily I'm never going to have to do that aggressive first step, but I did when I coated it, and I coated it primarily so I could clean it a little easier. It's a big black Suburban. So my secondary step, knowing I was going to coat it, was protection free. But almost always, in my experience, I want to use an all-in-one product on the second step. If it's a car that's used daily, I'm going to use ceramic all-in-one. But the paint system will dictate if that is going to jive with it. So we were trying to do ceramic all-in-one as a second step on that same detail I was discussing. The paint system wasn't having it. It was too soft. It didn't like it at all. So we ended up actually detuning our pad and going with correcting cream as our secondary step and then applying a protection step afterwards. So my preference is always, instead of hand applying protection, I've already got the machine out. I'm in the groove. I'm going to try and do an all-in-one step as my secondary step, counting on that milder abrasive to clean up the haze or residue, and then leaving behind some protection. So that's what I like. But I will say that, again, it's going to change car to car, situation to situation. And then on a show queen like this, finishing sealant is a perfect all-in-one because I don't need any weather resilience, right? This thing, I've driven it in the rain. It doesn't do well in the rain. It's not made out of sugar, so it has seen the rain. The windshield wipers don't work. Didn't hook those back up. Okay, don't hate me for that. But the weather stripping, not very high quality. It's 60 plus years old, so the water kind of enters in the windows. But do I need ceramic protection on this car? No. So yeah, it'll vary.
Yep.
The bean counter said to sell 40 pads. I want to give you guys the best advice, right? I mean, I don't believe anybody needs 40 of one type of pad. By the time you're done with, I need a large format tool and a small format tool, I want 5-inch, 3-inch, 2-inch, 1-inch, you're going to get to 40 pads, no problem.
Yeah.
You probably don't need 45-inch pads. unless you are really detailing a lot of different cars with a lot of different paint systems, and you're starting to charge your neighbors, or like we mentioned earlier, charging your coworkers to polish their cars. So, but you will consume pads over time, right? So if you like our products, you'll probably eventually buy 40 pads from us at some point in time. So I can reassure the bean counters of that.
Yeah. And while it's best to clean them very closely after you use them, if you tend to hate pad washing like we do and kind of let a collection build up before you get to washing them, that could be an alternative too, having more pads.
Yeah. Experience is key. You know what you can't do? You can't gain experience by not trying this, right? And by learning a little bit. And, you know, I remember when I was, you know, crying from some of the checks I had to write for this, we were talking about the type of paint system that would go on this car. And in my mind, like, we have young kids that work in the store. I mean, you started there. Mm-hmm. I was there as a teenager as well. You know, a color clear system on this high end of a car, the guys that work in the store on week 2 can polish on this car and inspire confidence that somebody can use a machine effectively. I think that's like one of the greatest benefits that I got from learning how to polish as a teenager versus being in my 50s or 60s and insisting that everything had to be done by hand until the light bulb turned on. Mm-hmm. So I can say if you're here and you're in your 50s and 60s and never used a machine, it's time to try it. If you're younger and want to learn this skill that you can monetize and keep in your back pocket for the rest of your life, a machine's the way to do it. And I can tell you, like, the detailing jobs that I've been able to get and did earlier this year, I mean, it validates over 20 years of having played around with these things and the confidence to approach anything, whether it's a multi-million-dollar vintage Ferrari or if it's a $5,000 Kia. Mm-hmm. It can be just as special to the same person.
Yeah.
And you can make the paint better with a basic understanding and more experience gained by just starting out and doing something.
Yep.
Polishing related.
I don't see it on the chat anymore, so I forget who asked it, but someone was asking if it's okay for someone with little to no experience to start with, say, a G13 or a G15 or a G21, or would they be better off starting with a G8, G9? The G8, G9 is a little more forgiving and a little safer, but it is still perfectly fine for someone with little to no experience to use a G15 or G21. You just really want to be mindful about your process and make sure you're not being careless. So definitely, like, check our videos, you know, watch us talk about process and what to do, and then start somewhere nice and easy and flat. So like a hood, for example, where it's a larger, flatter surface, or the roof, depending on the vehicle, as opposed to starting in a really intricate, weird area, and kind of get your bearing about you before you start. But I would say if I gave someone a little guidance and sent them home with having no experience with a larger or a G15 or G21, that they'd be perfectly fine 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, and I mean, if you were worried, you could start with a G15,
yeah.
Right? The biggest thing with the long throw orbitals is just, you know, understanding that because of how far off center this thing throws, is that it's more of a balancing act. Mm-hmm. It's not pressure. You know, the machine's not going to run away from you. It just might not spin as much as you learn how to balance it. So yeah. It really is, if your car's clean, if it's decontaminated, you can jump right into a long throw.
I'd say the biggest risk, if you will, is just if you were to, say, like, come up to an adjacent panel, maybe something that's jutting out.
Yeah, perfect example.
That.
We could see this, Matt. This is where you know, a long throw tool would be a risk, right? We've got for a novice that maybe didn't prep well, right? This thing, it's greater than just the width of the pad. So if the pad were 6 inches and this is a 21 millimeter, that throw is nearly another inch, right? So I have to be mindful of essentially the inch above and beyond where I set this down. So I might actually hit this piece of chrome if I weren't extremely careful as part of my polishing process. So that's where the G9 and G8, they kind of just stay right under center. and give you a little bit easier way to kind of learn what the tool is doing. And then, yeah, the craziest thing that you'll see with a long throw tool is you'll be in the middle of a door on a Tahoe, right? It's like a 3-foot tall door, and it's covering a third of it, right? Just by keeping the machine static. That's how far the throw is. So
yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Is if you start with a longer throw tool like this, you haven't really perfected your technique yet. So I'm thinking specifically of the doors on my Camry, where it kind of starts a little convex, and then gets concave and kind of bends inwards. And if you don't have the technique perfected, it's going to be really easy to either only hit a third of the pad on the paint, or get into some real weird situations where you're throwing product everywhere, or hitting a leading edge super aggressive and barely any of the rest of the surface, or whatever it is. So really the big concern would be your technique, but it's definitely doable. You just want to be a little more mindful about your process and your technique.
There is a drinking game going on for something I'm saying. I have no idea what it is. Okay, all right. It was free. Sorry. The thickness. Somebody asked about the thickness of it. It is there's a very small little section below the rear wheels that was the only spot of rust on the car. To get the flatness of it, there's definitely some Bondo on the car. So when you put a paint thickness gauge on it, it reads like artwork, which if you've ever refinished a car or detailed a car and gotten that reading, you know that some sculpting has been done to it. So hard to determine the amount, but I can tell you it's plenty of paint on it.
Dr. Deek is on theme with the drinking game. Do you IPA after correcting and before protecting? And yes, that would typically be when you use a wipe down product like Surface Prep Cleanser, is after you correct to remove any remaining polishing oils prior to applying a protectant. Yeah.
And Rich Smith is saying, I'm still seeing hazing on that panel. Yeah, we did not cure all the hazing for the purpose of juxtaposition. So that was really to show the different processes with the same pad and different abrasives as we kind of tune to get our result.
Yeah, we've got a patchwork quilt over here.
Yeah. So we've had a couple of questions about protection, and I do think that what you just spoke about, panel wiping, is an important process on the back of a correction process. Our products, the Boss Creams, do feature an oil water emulsion, so removing that polishing oil before you ask something to adhere to your paint system is a good step. Some different products will have different emulsions. We used to sell water-based polishes, and even so, I would recommend a panel wipe with some water-based polishes because you might have dust, you might have little particles that are settling in the paint. That is a great step. And all that does is ensure that whatever protection you are putting on the paint afterwards is bonding to the paint and not bonding to any residue that might be on the paint in your wipe down. Obviously, that's less integral with a secondary step that is an all-in-one, right? Because you don't want to use the panel wipe and marginalize the protection you just laid down. But it will benefit a carnauba wax that would be applied to that car. It would benefit a polymer sealant. It would benefit any coating as well to do that. In fact, it's critical for ceramic coatings to get the adhesion and durability that they can offer to do panel wipes, and be very careful about making sure of that.
Yep. Joel Peterson asked, how much compound are you putting on the pads? That's a tricky part for me to get right. I'm going to hope that I didn't completely trash Matt's setup over here and that the camera will still appropriately show. Okay. So I'm going to demonstrate as if this is a brand new pad that hasn't had product applied to it. But what you want to avoid is applying toothpaste commercial style. You want to avoid thick globs of product like that. What you want to do is have the tip of the bottle against the pad as you squeeze and release. That way it's kind of like a half circle as you apply around. If you can see the difference in thickness on those lines. And then you want to do a swirl. The first time you use the pad, you're going to want to essentially butter the pad. So you're going to come around. I've already got a little extra product on there, but you're essentially going to do some circular swirls around the pad to ensure that it's covered efficiently. And then you'll know based on when you start polishing, watching the way that the product behaves on the surface, that'll give you a good clue of whether you're using too much product or not enough. As you start to polish, if you're seeing kind of like dry, patchy spots, that's an indicator that you might need a little more. If you're seeing a lot of thick, kind of like translucent, almost opaque kind of buildup of product, almost like you rubbed like Vaseline on the vehicle,
Yeah,
that's
like a
probably
pushy,
too much. Yeah.
like you're almost like pushing the material around.
Yeah.
I would say, there is no, like, for me, the priming is generally the time where I could overdo it the most, which is the first time you put a dry pad on the paint. Tend to try and get the most surface area. Some people will spray detail sprays, or there are products that are literally called pad primer to create some lubrication. That one is the one where I tend to see people overdo it the most. And then it's as you go panel by panel, if you're cleaning your pad face off, however you approach it, if you want to kind of spread it like Stevie did, or if you want to do, a set amount of small drops, depending on how you spread and work your area, whatever you prefer. The key is, less is probably more until you establish that, like you said, you need to add more. But it's never ideal to use too much, even though it does help us sell more product. I think it's going to detract from your result.
Yep.
One thing we didn't talk about, Cypher asked this question. He said, is there a big difference between your complete compound versus correcting cream? And in which situations would you go with one over the other? We didn't talk about diminishing abrasives versus non-diminishing abrasives. And one thing, so the difference between a diminishing abrasive is as it is worked, it breaks down to smaller and smaller sizes. Non-diminishing abrasives, which is really exclusively what we feature now, are a set size abrasive that never change size. And how you gauge the aggression of the different abrasives, at least within our products, is by the micron size of those abrasives. So all of our abrasives, including complete compound, will feature submicron aluminum oxide-based abrasives. In complete compound, you're going to have some larger micron abrasives, in particular because that is meant to blend between hand application and machine application.
Yep. So that's going to be a good hand polishing step because it has that larger abrasive. It gives you more cut with the less powerful method of application. But then even with an orbital, it's going to be a slightly larger particle abrasive that's going to give you a little more bite. One of the drawbacks of that, although it is a great defect removal, one of the drawbacks is that larger particle abrasive can be more prone to leaving a slight haze on more delicate or soft finishes. So that could be a good, you'd need a second step after that. So that would be a good example of the two-step process that we're using here, where if you do use complete compound and have that haze, you would finish probably with complete polish to remove that fine haze. Yeah,
and that larger micron is going to give you better results by hand, but it could leave them marring by machine. And so you're as you mentioned, you've got that complementary step, but really that's the biggest difference between compound and correcting cream. Correcting cream is going to be a much smaller abrasive that is meant specifically for only machine application. And the emulsion on correcting cream is going to be have a higher heat tolerance because it is designed to work specifically with our long throw orbitals. So if you put complete compound on a long throw orbital and spun it up, it might stick up or dry on you. It probably won't, but it would have a higher tendency to versus complete or correcting cream. So biggest difference is where they're designed to be used. The abrasives within them have different sizes, even though they're of similar quality and just overall composition.
Yep. We had a question. Sorry, I lost it. But we had a question about polishing the metal trim, how you would go about that. I usually get great results just polishing it by hand, but you could also use a smaller, especially on thinner trim like this, you could use like a 1-inch pad. Even on the G8, you typically don't need anything super aggressive, especially on chrome finish trim like this. But usually by hand, you get really great results with metal, depending on how bad it is. So just a couple quick passes with, my preferred is ceramic metal polish on a white foam fast correcting pad. But just doing a couple quick passes with that is usually enough.
Yeah, I think most people on a lot of modern chrome-esque finishes, one, they might be looking at a plastic piece, right?
Yeah.
And then a lot of times they might also be looking at some chrome base with a clear coat on top of it, so it's actually best to treat that like paint. On true chrome or a stainless finish on an older car, remember, chrome and stainless finishes, it's a chemical bonding process, and it is a finite material as well. So if you spin up an aggressive approach, you might actually cut through material. So it's all, I think with a lot of high finished metals, try a hand process. You can use our swabs as well. I find getting into tight spots where you do see metal, like the emblems on this car, would be a great approach, right? Try it by hand. If you really want to restore a piece, you might even remove it from the car on something this old and try like a buffing wheel with some rouge if you're really going for restoration. But if you're going for restoration, you're probably past the point of saving chrome, and that's where hand approach would probably be a smart start.
Yep. Ian Ramirez asked, if I were to take close-up pictures of my Mercedes paint, would you be able to point me in the right Boss cream and pad combo, or is there still some experimentation that I need to do? We can definitely give you an idea of where you might want to start, but really how that finish responds, there still likely is going to be some experimentation where we give you a general guideline, you try that, and if it works, awesome, and if it doesn't, you know whether you need to get more aggressive or not. But definitely feel free to tag us on Instagram or DM us a photo or video, or reach out directly to our customer service team, send them an email.
Yeah, somebody was asking if we're going to use our micro polisher today. We probably won't need to demonstrate the micro polisher in particular. The same concept that we're trying to explain today about two-step polishing. The micro polisher, I mean, it's great for that. In fact, because you can change between drive systems and pad systems and backing plate sizes. You could do two steps quite a bit easier, but this is a big flat car, you probably wouldn't be using it, but it's a great approach for those contours where you're trying to maintain pad rotation, and the best way to do that is by shrinking the area that you're working, right, via backing plate and pad size. So that is why the smaller format tools exist, because we still prefer machine results, but we got tighter spaces. We're not going to shove this big machine into the little crevices and risk punching off our trim or doing damage to an adjacent panel. We're just going to shrink the machine size. And so that is why all of these tools exist, and it ensures that you can get consistent results on the entirety of the paint system, regardless of the area that you're working. So
yeah,
don't really need to demonstrate it. Just know that if I were buying one machine, I'd start with a large format one. As soon as I saw what a large format machine would do, and how easy it was to use, now we're stepping down to the complementary size tools, the G8s, the G13s, the micro polisher. If you only have small stuff, we've always said this, like a motorcycle, you probably don't need a huge format tool. But yeah, that is the reason all those small form tools exist, to practice the same principles we just preached on that big panel, but in those tighter spaces.
Mm-hmm. Cat Richard Bojangles asked, I think that you changed your name potentially, or maybe Julie did that, but any tips for white paint? I struggle really hard not only keeping track of the working area, but being able to see the results after. My biggest tip for white paint, you still want to use a bright light. That's what's going to show your defects, but catching it at an angle. So for example, if I were using the Boss Swirl Finder light, you don't need to switch cameras for this, sorry. Holding it at an angle and keeping your eye at an angle where the light's kind of bouncing off the panel and coming sideways to your eye. I don't know the scientific term for that. But that's typically what'll allow you to see the defects in the paint without getting all that reflection. Because with lighter paints like white, especially silver and really metallic silvers, even some darker grays with a lot of metallic, usually what's happening is all of that light's just getting reflected right back into your eye and you can't see that defect. So yeah, keeping your head kind of low and the light bouncing off the surface is usually the best way to see those defects.
Also too, like once you find the area where it's easiest to establish what results you're creating, note your process, and then, yeah, trust me, man, I've got ADD too, all right? So it's hard for me to remember, have I done this door or that door, even when washing a vehicle, okay? So polishing on a car where it's hard to establish the difference in results as you work your way around your area, you're gonna have to be a lot more deliberate, but
yeah, you could work with panel lines. If I've taped off the trim and there's a spot where like the tape kind of overlaps in one spot or has a little like bubble or something, I'll use that as a reference point. There's a bunch of creative ways to create reference points for yourself.
Yeah, and again, if you establish a process, whoa, the flake just popped, I like that result. White and silvers, they're really forgiving, right? You're not gonna see every tiny little scratch. So if 4 passes with correcting cream in an orange pad made your paint pop, okay, that's all you got to do. Do it until you encounter something different or egregious. On whites, older whites, you tend to see oxidation a little easier. So that could be something that you'd be looking for, but like on modern paint systems in particular, when they're putting so much flake in so many of those like less exciting colors, not that I don't like white cars, but your guidance with regards to the light and then remembering or finding some way to track your process as you work your way around the car, that's going to be the best way to get a consistent finish, even if it's not naturally going to be show car perfect every time. And with white cars, I hardly recommend that that's a good use of your time. It's just not going to be worth it to chase every single scratch in a white car. We did have one question about marring. So marring is a great, I'd say it's a catch-all. Haze is another one too. Buffer trails, we're kind of talking about the same thing. It's going to be easier to see on darker paint systems. And I think the first time that you see it, you might get scared, right? Like, oh, I just polished and what the heck is that, right? But really what it's going to look like, particularly if you've got a highly focused light, it's going to look like almost 1,000 tiny little cuts as a beam of light kind of goes around it. And that is called micro marring, right? It's not going to be deep, physical cuts. It'll just be some light distortion that looks blurry or hazy, right? It's quite literally like smearing, almost. So we keep that in mind as it relates to taking an aggressive approach with an aggressive abrasive, aggressive pad facing. We just acknowledge that might be a result. And if it is, and you start to see it, hey, there's a remedy. And it's a second step. It's a gentler pad. It's a gentler polish. With a G9 or G8 and an orange pad and correcting cream, you're rarely going to see those marring or buffer trails except on the softest, oldest paint systems. But know that if you do see that and it scares you, hey, there's a way we can back out of that. We can refine it and fix it.
Absolutely. Julie, did you have anybody that standed out? We need to give away our second prize.
Well, EM Ramirez says that they've got their G9 skills and they're ready for a 21 millimeter throw, but maybe we can provide a 15 millimeter throw.
If he's ready for a 21 too, we can. I mean, we made the kit up. We can pair him up with a 21. But I think that was the other person we were describing before we went to do this show. We want to see somebody that's ready to take the next step. So EM Ramirez, I think you're that winner. So be sure to email winners@griotsgarage.com to claim your new long throw polisher and apply the lessons that we taught you. And of course, we want to see results. Sounds like you got a Mercedes to work on. And that's going to be, depending on its age, German clear coats are a little harder. right? They may be a little more resistant to things like marring, but you might have to work it a little harder to get the results you want. But that should keep you busy.
Yeah. It'll be a fun one to experiment on with your new G21.
Okay. We got a good question. How do you remove ceramic coating when the paint wasn't corrected correctly? Ooh, that's unfortunate. Honestly, it depends upon the quality of the ceramic coating that was applied. Some of those extremely high solid coatings can be quite obnoxious to remove. Some of them, kind of the middle grade ones, can come off with a basic polishing process. So, you might actually just approach that car as if you're trying to correct it to remedy the swirl marks that you're seeing. And that will invariably remove the coating as well. So, but if you've got, I've definitely had my fair share of conversations about coatings over the past 5 to 10 years. And there are some that are impossible to remove without wet sanding and or refinishing. So hopefully it is not that. Because that would be a pretty careless detailer that didn't correct your paint correctly and then set you up with a coating that was impossible to remove. So let's hope that's not the case.
Or if so, hopefully you can get a refund for that.
Yeah. Okay, well, we had a lot of questions. I'm certain we're going to have a busy No Questions Left Behind. Hopefully you guys saw kind of the benefits of a two-step process and some of the intricacies and learning that you can do as you approach that, even in between different abrasives on the same pad medium. And then, of course, Stevie, excellent technique to demonstrate the balance, the arm speed, and we've got a lot of that Lincoln left to polish before show season, but now we know what we're going to do on the rest of this big black car. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. For anybody that won, be sure to follow up at winners@griotsgarage.com.
Yep.
Be sure to check out the liquid car care sale that's going on until the 25th. You guys have early access. Use the code SMLiquid. If it's your first time here, follow us on social media. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and sign up for our emails so you're the first to know about future product launches and promotions.
And check out these 6 shirts.
Yes. Group 6 with a 6, IX-griotsgarage.com. If you're digging our t-shirts today, we are just getting started with a very cool apparel line for the future. So thank you all for watching. If you didn't get your question answered, tune in on Friday for No Questions Left Behind, where of course there will be giveaways for that as well. Have fun in your garage, everyone.
Have fun in your garage.
Nick and Stevie got you looking right. Answer questions, drop in the glow. By the end of the stream, you'll be a pro. Swirls and haze, yeah, we say goodbye. With the right technique, watch that finish fly. Dial the speed, work that pass. Paint correction with the touch of class. Flex that pad, feel the groove. Long throw orbitals make that paint move. Rotary spin with the pro's delight. Gonna bring that gloss, make it shine so